Actually, a very exciting daf. New parak, new possibilities, new horizons, new halachas, new karbanas, new shvuos. You could sense it in the air. That something good is going to happen. All right, so let's go right there. So we're picking up today's daf is Lamed Zayin 37. We are picking up Lamed Vav Amud Beis 36b, the Gemara. So remember again, just to reorient ourselves a little bit. Yesterday, pretty much all of Amud Beis was a Mishnah. So we started Shevuos HaPikadon. Shevuos HaPikadon is a very simple Shevuah. I go over to Ruvain. I say, Ruvain, I would like you to give me back that item I deposited with you. Ruvain says, don't know what you're talking about. Never happened. Then again, Ruvain says, I swear I never received anything from you. Or I say, Ruvain, you say you never had anything from me. Swear to me that you never had anything from me. Ruvain swears that he doesn't. Turns out that he's lying. We'll say that's called, I should say, the act of swearing that he does not have the pikadon is called Shevuos HaPikadon. And then we saw the ramifications ultimately, again, if it turns out that he is lying. So we'll say, remember again, Shevuos HaPikadon, one of the interesting parts that we saw is that one is chayiv the karban, even if one swears intentionally falsely, for what we call zadon shvuah. So we'll say, even if a person mamish knows at the time they're taking, Ruvain knows at the time that he's taking the oath, that A, he had the object, and that B, he knows that it is prohibited to take a false oath, and the penalty for the oath is a karban. Nevertheless, he will still be chayiv. He will still be chayiv. Says the Gemara. Rav Acha bar Huna Rav Shmuel Bered Rabba bar Chana v'Rav Yitzchak Bered Rav Yehuda Tanu Shevuos Be'Rabbos. Well, this is very interesting. All of these Rabbanim were learning Shevuos in the yeshiva of Rabbah. Isn't that interesting? We're learning Shevuos. They were learning Shevuos. It's such a beautiful idea. So Pagavu Rav Chisda. So Rav Kana, So Rav Kana bumped into them, and Amrlu, we said, asked him the following Shabbos at top of Lamed Zayin. Here's the shaila he asked them. Hazid b'Shvuos HaPikadon v'Hisrubo Mahu. And we'll say, what happens if a person intentionally violated the Shevuos HaPikadon? So again, remember, it's a simple case. I go over to Ruvain, I say, Ruvain, give me back the Pikadon I deposited with you. Ruvain knows that I deposited a pikadon with him, but what? He actively chooses to lie. So he goes ahead and he says, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no pikadon. And he also knows it is prohibited to take a shvuah, and he also knows the penalty for a shvuah is a karban. And not only that, we'll say, let's make it even more complicated. The hisrubo. We'll say hisrubo means he got asra. He was warned by witnesses. So we'll say, what's the halacha? Mahu. So we'll say, now he violated the shvuah. So we're asking, what is his punishment? Mahu. Kevan dechideshut b'chala Torah kula ashkan meiz demaisi karban v'achamaisi karban. So do we say, Rabbi say that in general, a karban is usually only brought when one goes ahead and violates something inadvertently. Shevuos HaPikadon, Rabbi say, is the example. Is the exception to that rule. Shevuos HaPikadon is the one infraction where even if one intentionally violates the shvuah, they will still what? Bring a karban. So do we say, since Shevuos HaPikadon is a chiddush, because throughout the entire Torah, one doesn't bring a karban if one intentionally violates the infraction, v'hachamaisi karban. Yet here by Shevuos HaPikadon, we do go ahead and bring the karban. Therefore, again, lo shna asur lo shna lo asur but so therefore, it makes no difference whether they gave him hasra or not. Hasra, no hasra. Shevuos HaPikadon is a chiddush idea, and therefore you're going to go ahead and bring a karban no matter what, even if he got asra on the front end. Oh Dilma, or both maybe here's the only other possibility. When do you bring a karban? But so when do you bring a karban? That's only if ultimately again there was no asra. Aval heicha de asrube. But where there is hasra, milka lucky, you do get malchus. Karban lo maisi. We'll say maybe where there has hasra, we'll say maybe things change a little bit, and maybe ultimately again where there is hasra, ultimately again you get malchus, but you won't get a karban. O dilma hava havidna, or we'll say what? Or perhaps ultimately again you get both. So we'll say what's different in this case over here? What's different in this case is you've introduced hasra. So the shayla is, what does hasra do to an intentional violation of Shevuos HaPikadon? I promised you an exciting Gemara. So what does hasra do with an intentional violation of a Shevuos HaPikadon? So remember again, a regular case of intentional violation of Shevuos HaPikadon, we got that. That's like a softball, right? That's the Mishnah. If Ruvain, I say to Ruvain, give me back the pikadon. Ruvain knows he has the pikadon. He knows that it is prohibited to swear falsely, and he intentionally does both. The Mishnah tells me there's a karban. Yes, we're in karban. an asham, which we'll discuss in greater depth. The interesting variable over here is what does hasura do to this mix? If witnesses go ahead and warn him that if he swears falsely, the penalty is so and so, what does that do to this mix? So we'll say the Gemara entertains three possibilities. Possibility A is that when there is hasura, nothing changes. He just brings a carbon. Possibility B, where there's hasura, what happens? It changes it, and what does he get? Malchus. And possibility 3 is that where there is hasra, it changes it, but it doesn't take away the carbon. It just simply does what? It adds on malchus to an additional carbonic obligation. We'll take a look at the Tab Rashi for just a moment. Chayiv carbon or malchus or shneim. Here's the fundamental shayla: are you chayiv a carbon, or are you chayiv malchus, or are you chayiv both? The Gabishua Sa'idos Afagav the Chayiv Nami Mezik Ishogig. Luckily, boy hach by Mushum the in hasras. Di Bishwas Ha'idos Dami. Excuse me. Di Bishwas the I Bishwas Ha'idos Dami. Yodea Shem the Mish. I'm sorry. The Mi Yodea Shem Yodim Lo Edus Yachol Hasras Bo. So I'll say here's the difference. So we're not going to get into this distinction, but Rashi is just pointing out why the Shaila never came up by the other Shevuos. Shevuos Hapikadon Israel says the one case where you can administer proper hasra. So we'll say, see, here's our Shaila. So whether it's hasra, do you get carbon? Do you get malchus, or do you get both? Amrale Tanina. So I said to him, while we learn this, Chamura Hemen Shevuos Hapikadon. The Rabbi says Shevuos Hapikadon is more chamur than Shevuos Ha'idus. Why is that? Shechayovin al zidona makis val shigagasa asham bekesef shkalim. Because I will say for intentional violation, you will get malchus, and for a shogi you'll have to bring an asham that is worth at least 2 shkalim. Now watch this. Midikarmale al zidona makis. The fact that the Gemara says that for an intentional violation you get malchus. Michlal da asrube. So I'll say, where's malchus coming up? It must be the malchus is coming up in a case of hasura. V'ka'amar makis in karban lo. So I'll say this seems to be an explicit proof to the fact that it says if you intentionally violate, you'll go ahead and you'll get malchus. And it sounds like malchus yes, karban no. To which the Gemara says my chumra. And what would be the chumra? We'll say, what is the chumra that Pshua Sapikadin has? We'll say a person would rather go ahead and bring a carbon and not get malchus. So we'll say this is based on a general principle that we assume most people would rather pay money than suffer physical pain. In other words, I would rather pay even an exorbitant amount of money than have to suffer through physical pain. That's the chumrah. So we'll say, so it seems to be from over here, we've answered our question that when there is intentional violation of a Shevuos Hapikadon, and it is preceded by hasra, so therefore again the punishment in that scenario will also be what will be malchus and not the carbon. Amalu Rava Bar Isi, no. Man Hana Zidon Shevuos Hapikadon Lo Nitan La Kapara. Who is the one who holds that an intentional violation of Shevuos Hapikadon? Rabbi say Lo Nitan La Kapara means that it doesn't get a carbon. Who is the opinion who says that you don't bring a carbon in a case of intentional violation of Shevuos Hapikadon? That's Reb Shimon. Aval Rabbanan carbon nami maisi. According to the Rabbanan, even in a case of Zodon Shvuah, even in a case where he intentionally violated the Shvuah, he will still bring a carbon. Amru Rav Kahana, so listen to this. Amru Rav Kahana. So Rav Kahana says, Bar Mina. The truth is, leave out this proof, and I'll tell you why. Da'ana taninallah. I'm the one who taught it. V'hachi taninallah. And here's how I taught it. So Rav Kahana is saying, essentially, don't go ahead and use something I taught to prove something different. I taught it. I'm going to tell you how it is. I told you, like, this stuff gets heated. Everybody thinks like Shevuos Hapikadon. Everybody agrees. Everybody gets along. It's not true. There's like some major machloksim over here. V'hachi taninala. So we'll say, here's how you have to teach it. Echad zadona ve'echad shigigasa ashem mikesef shkalim. Whether you go ahead and you violate the Shevuah intentionally or you violate the Shevuah unintentionally, the penalty is always the same, which is what Rabbi was saying. Asham bekesef shkalim, a carbon asham, which is a sin offering, and ultimately again, worth 2 shekel. Umay chumra, and I will say ultimately again, what is the chumra? Di'ilu hasam chatas bas danka v'hacha ba'asham kesef shkalim. We'll say here's the difference. The difference is that by Shevuos Ha'idus, Rabbi was saying, you can bring a carbon chatos. bas danka. I will say danka means even a sixth of a dinar. In other words, I will say, which is another way of saying you could bring a pretty inexpensive carbon chatos. Masha inkin carbon asham, which is the carbon over here by Shevuos HaPikadon, has to be worth at least 2 shkalim. I have the ligmar mina, and why don't we go ahead and learn out from here? Dilma delo asrubei. So say, so why not learn out from here that even in a case of what Shevuos HaPikadon, where the violation was intentional, right? And that you're still chayav a carbon. So we'll say, why don't we apply this to this case over here and say that even where there's hasura, this should be the halacha. To which the Gemara says you can't bring a raya over here. Why? Dilma delo asrubei. Because we'll say it is possible that maybe the intentional violation of the shvu over here was not preceded by hasra. Okay, so we'll say, so we still haven't answered our question. Lishnach rina. We'll say another possibility. Tashma ein chayavin al shigigasa. One is not chayav ultimately again for a shogig violation. Mahin chayavin al zedona. So what are you chayav ultimately again for intentional violation? Asham bekesef shkalim. We'll say you are chayav in asham that is worth 2 shkalim. My love b'da asrubei. Now when we say that you're chayav for a zadon, for an intentional violation of the shvuah, does that not mean my love b'da asrubei? We're not talking about a case where there is hasra. Hachanami de lo asrubei. Which the Gemara says maybe not. It could also be talking about a case where there's no hasra. So we'll say. So remember again, just so we keep our eye on our ball. So what are we focusing on over here? Focusing on a very simple question. Here's what we know. What do we know? So here's what we know. Number one is that if a person intentionally violates a Shevuos HaPikadon, we'll say, what is the halacha? Carbon, right? You have to bring a carbon. That we know. There's an asham. We'll say, how do we know that? That's mefurish in the Mishnah. What's the question we're raising now? What happens if there is hasra? What happens if there is a warning prior to violation? How does warning change this dynamic? One of 3 possibilities. Either A, it doesn't. B, it swaps the punishment. It's not a carbon, but rather it's malchus. Or C, carbon remains, but malchus is added on. So we're just trying to figure out that's all. Just trying to remember what the halacha is. So far we haven't been able to prove it. Tashma. Lo im amrit b'nazir tamei shekin loka. So in the case of nazir tamei, where nazir becomes tamei, so he gets malchus. For example, actually, we'll say it's talking about a case where a nazir intentionally becomes tamei. He'll go ahead and he'll get malchus. Shekin. I'm sorry. Let me read that again. Tashma. Im lo im amrit b'nazir tamei shekin loka. Tomar b'shvuos HaPikadon she'ina loka. So it's by Shevuos HaPikadon. If a person intentionally goes ahead and swears a false Shevuos HaPikadon, he doesn't get malchus. Now watch this. Midika Amar Loke, not from the fact that the Nazir Tameh gets malchus. We'll say in general we assume malchus must be preceded by what? In order to administer malchus, what do you need? Hasra. So if we're talking about a case of a Nazir Tameh who gets malchus, presumably we're talking about a case over here where he had Hasra. Michlada Asrubei. Vika Amar. So we'll say, if we're comparing the case of Nazir Tameh to the case of Shevuos HaPikadon, so we're going to assume that the cases are comparable on both levels. So if the Nazir Tameh case is a case of Hasra, so the case of Shevuos HaPikadon also has to be Hasra. And yet, what do we see? Michlal da Asrubei, V'ka'amar, Tomar b'Shevuos HaPikadon, she'eino loke, aval carbon ma'isi. So let's say it seems to be pretty pashut. If the case of Nazir Tameh is the case where there was Hasra, the case of the intentional violation of Shevuos HaPikadon also has to be where there is Hasra. And yet, what do we see? What does the Gemara say? There are no malchus. We don't give malchus. It seems to be it's just a carbon. So it seems to be even when there's Hasra, Hasra does not change the dynamic. To which the Gemara says, Tomar b'Shevuos HaPikadon she'eino loke, aval carbon ma'isi. Ma'eino loke. No. We'll say the Gemara says, what does it mean when he says he doesn't get malchus? Eino niftar b'malchus. We'll say what it means is he is not exempted from culpability simply with malchus. Rather, again, he requires the additional kapara ultimately of a carbon. Michlal de Nazir Tameh niftar b'malchus. So you're trying to tell me then, I will say that's what? That in Nazir Tameh, his issues are taken care of with malchus? It's not true. Ha-carbon ksibdei. We'll say the Nazir Tameh also has to bring a carbon. To which the Gemara says, no. Hasam demaisi carbon. Why doesn't Nazir Tameh bring a carbon? So the reason he has to bring a carbon, we'll say, has nothing to do with this tumah. The carbon actually allows him to what? To restart his next period of Nazirus. Okay. Amru Rabbana Kamei de Rabba. So we'll say the Rabbana said this over in front of Rabba. Amru Lahu. He said to them, Michlal dechi lo asrubei. So we'll say it sounds like over here that ultimately they were talking about a case where there was no hasra. V'ika edim mechayiv. Ultimately, again, that where there is no hasra, but there are witnesses, he would be chayiv. But how could that be? Kfiras dvarim ba'alma. Who they all say that is simply a denial of words. Why would that make him chayiv? Alma kasava Rabba. Therefore, Rabba holds hakofer b'mamon sheyesh alav edim. That if a person goes ahead and denies money over which there is testimony that makes him liable, pater. Amr Rav Chanina l'Rabba Tanyadim se'elecha. So Rav Chanina said to Rabba, there is a brayso that supports you. V'ki cheshba. So we'll say this is by Shevuos HaPikadon. He denies it. V'ki cheshba denies his liability. Prat lemod le'echa min ha'achin or le'echa min ha'shutfin. We'll say this comes to exclude a case where what? Where he goes ahead and he admits his liability to one of the brothers or to one of the partners. If you look at Rashi, I will say, Rashi says over here, it's the first one line in Rashi, Pater me karban, prat lemod le'echa min ha'achin, sheish lo chelik b'mamon, kishetavo ha'ach ha'sheni kavra. So we'll say, this is an interesting case. Torah is going to exclude from a carbon, which is, let's say I go over to Reuven and I say, Reuven, you owe me money. But Reuven doesn't just owe it to me, he owes it to me and my 3 brothers. So Reuven denies it to me, but he admits the liability to one of the other brothers. So what happens in a situation like that? So the Torah says, he has to deny it. The Torah understands carbonic liability for a false Shevuos HaPikadon only comes about when there is complete denial. But if there's only partial denial, which means he admits to me, he denies to me, but admits to my brother, who's also a party to this debt, then Lamai Sayan is not Chayv Karban. V'nishpa al sheker, prat lelove b'shtar. Well, this is very interesting. He swears falsely. This comes to exclude a case where somebody is lent money and a debt is recorded in a document. Look at Rashi. Prat lelove b'shtar. Kasaga daitcha lekofer mamon sheyesh lev shtar o edim. To which the Gemara says, or one who goes ahead and lends a witness. Because also in this case, I can deny the Shevuos HaPikadon to whatever I can deny the Pikadon whatever I want, but it doesn't matter why. Why? Because there's independent corroboration of this obligation, either through the document or through the witnesses. Amrlei, imi shumha lo tisayin. If this is your proof, it's not going to help, and I'll tell you why. Ba'omer levisi v'lo levisi be'edim. Because it will say, it could be that he claims, I agree that I went ahead and they borrowed, but I did not borrow with witnesses. Or ultimately, again, or I borrowed, but I did not use a document. Also, where do we know this from? From the fact that the pasuk is v'ki cheshba, he denied it. Ultimately, again, what does this teach us? This comes to exclude a case where he admits the debt to one of the brothers or to one of the partners. We'll say, what's the case where he admits part of the debt to one of the brothers? So we'll say, if at the end of the day, let's say I go over to Reuven and I say, Reuven, you owe me money. And Reuven denies it to me, but he goes over, and you owe money to me and my brothers. And he goes over to brother A and he admits, what is he admitting? If he's admitting the part that he owes to brother B, right, then the Maisikin Doli Bapalgadi Day, Haika Kfira Diidach, he's still denying the portion he owes to me. And Alav da Amarle Masravinon Mitarvinon Yazvis. Rather, what he's saying over here is ultimately, again, I went ahead and I borrowed from both of you. Rashi says, Mishanenu lavisa, you borrowed from both of us, excuse me. I'm sorry. I say to him, to Reuven, you borrowed from both of us. Va'amar lahu lo mechad menaichu yasvi. And Reuven counters back and he says, no, I only borrowed from one of you. Dahavile kfiras devarim ba'alma. Because we'll say at the end of the day, he's not negating the claim as much as he is disagreeing with my version of events. And since again I will say the first case is dealing with kfiras devarim, therefore what? Seifanamic kfiras devarim. So will say the seif was also dealing with kfiras devarim. So we'll say, fine. So we stop over here without still any resolution to our question. Simple question. What does Hasra do to the dynamic of Shevuos HaPikadon b'mezi? When a person goes ahead, or Zidon Shvuah, what does Hasra do when a person intentionally goes ahead and violates the Shevuos HaPikadon? Does it change the punishment, add on to the punishment, subtract from the punishment, or leave it the same? Tashma. So we'll say we're going to continue weiter. We're not finished yet. Tashma. Enu chayiv al shigagasa u'ma'u chayiv. So we'll say a person is not chayiv for a shogeg. A person accidentally goes ahead and takes a false Shevuos HaPikadon. One is not chayiv for that. Umau chayiv al zadona. So what are you chayiv for when it comes to intentional violation? Asham bekesef shkalim. We'll say if I intentionally take a false Shevuos hapikadon, I'm chayiv an asham that is worth 2 shekel. My love is zadon edim. We'll say when we say that it's an intentional false Shevuos hapikadon, are we not talking about a case where even though there are witnesses who warned me, I still violate the Shevuah, and yet we see I'm still chayiv to a carbon, I'm still chayiv a carbon. Lo zadon asma. We'll say no. Rather, what it means is there are no witnesses, but I know that I'm lying and I intentionally lie. Tashma hayush teikite edim. So we'll say, listen to this. If there are 2 groups of witnesses, we'll say who know testimony about a particular matter. Kafra harishona va'achar kafra shnia. So we'll say, let's watch this. There are 2 groups of witnesses. I go over to Group A. I say, Group A, you know testimony on my behalf. Come and testify for me. And what does Group A say? Group A says, we have no information for you. We have no idea, no knowledge of anything that you're talking about. Kafra rishona va'achar kafra shnia. And then ultimately, again, the second group goes ahead in its kofar as well. The second group goes ahead and denies any kind of knowledge. So we'll say, what's that halacha? Shtehen chayavos. Both groups ultimately, again, are chayiv. Why? Because we'll say, ultimately, again, the edus could have been upheld by either of them, by both of them. Now we'll say, now what does this mean? Bishlam shniyah techayiv the hakafar leikat rishona. El rishona may mechayiv. We'll say, well, so listen to this. When you have 2 groups, right, Group A and Group B of witnesses, so we'll say, I understand when Group B denies any knowledge of testimony, I understand why they're chayiv. Why are both saying? Because by that point in time, Group A has already denied any kind of knowledge. Therefore, what? Group B is the only possible group who could attest to the veracity of my claim. But when Group 1 denies liability, ultimately, again, why should they be chayiv? At the end of the day, when Group A denies liability, there's still what? There's still Group B. There's still another testimonial unit. Amar Ravina Hacham asking, what's the case here? Kigon shahaisa shnia b'shas kfiras harishona krovin b'nishoseyen. Also, listen to this interesting case. What's the case? Ravina says that the second group, shahaisa shnia b'shas kfiras harishona, the second group of Moshe, at the time of at the time of the denial of the first group, they were related through their wives. Unishosehan gosisos. And I will say, ultimately, again, the wives were on the cusp of death. Rashi says over here, Krovin Nishosei, and Rashi says, Nisue shtei achayos, Tahi shaita lo chazlis leboses. So the case over here was where ultimately, again, the first group was related to the second group, ultimately again through their wives. The wives, however, again were on the cusp of death. Ma'udetema, what would I have thought? Rov goses in lemisa. Let's say the majority of people who are goses and ultimately die, and therefore perhaps you would say the second group is not disqualified. Kamash malon mihas chayininu. We'll say kamash malon, therefore what? At the time when the first group denied any knowledge, they were related to the second. Because they were related to the second, therefore what? The second was precluded from giving testimony as well. Therefore, when the first group denies liability, they are effectively denying me any possibility of getting real eidos. So says the Gemara, Tashma, Balabayis Sheta'an Tainas Ganav Bipikadon. Also listen to this. A Balabayis who comes along, Tainas Ganav. So what's the case? The case over here is, I claim, Ruvain, you have my object. Ruvain claims, I had it, but it was stolen. Right? Vinishba. And Abba say, what happens? He swears to the effect that he does not have the object, rather it was stolen. Fahoda. And then he admits that he lied. Abba say, if you take a look at Rashi for just a moment, it's right across in Rashi. Tainas Ganav, Rashi says, Pater atzmo ayidei geneva, shetan nignav hemeni. Shomer chinam pater migneva, the kamelam babakama, shem nishbo bo edim shalim kifel kiganav atzmo. So also listen to this. So in this case over here, I deposited an object with Ruvain. I come to claim it from Ruvain. Ruvain claims it was stolen. On a technical level, he could exempt himself with that claim. Why? Because he's a shomer chinam, he's an unpaid custodian, and therefore, b'pashtos, again, he could exempt his claim himself with the claim of nignav. It was stolen. Now, we'll say, now what happened over here is something very interesting. Vahoda. Now, we'll say, he comes along, and therefore, after he takes the false Shevuah, he admits that he lied, and that he has the object. Then what happens afterwards? Ubo edim. Then I will say afterwards, ultimately again, witnesses come. Witnesses come. I will say now the chap over here is as follows. Now this is an interesting case because remember, if he admits it, I will say he's a thief. What is a thief chayiv? What is a thief chayiv? Kefel, double payment. But however, remember again, kefel is a knas, or at least the second of the two payments is a knas. What's the halacha with knas? Moda b'knas pater. Once you admit it, you're exempt. But in this case over here, although he admitted it, what happens afterwards? Witnesses come. So I'll say, so the shaila is, what's the dynamic over here? So watch this. So I'll say, if he admitted his claim, or if he admitted his liability before the witnesses came, then mishalim karen v'chomesh v'asham. Then I will say goes in and he pays the principal, the chomesh a fifth, and the asham, and he brings a carbon. And the Rebbe will say, take a look at Rashi. V'nishma v'odu bo edim. So he says, not yet. So v'im bo edim, holder will say, but ultimately again, if the witnesses come first and then he admits, will say, if his admission comes first, essentially he exempts himself from what? From the kefal. If, however, again the witnesses came first and he only admitted his liability afterwards, then mishalim tashlumi kefal v'asham. Then I'll say ultimately again he will pay kefal. So even though he admits it, because ultimately the witnesses came first, so we'll say so essentially the variable over here is the kefal. If he admits before the witnesses come, he exempts himself from kefal. If his admission comes after the witnesses come, although after the witnesses come, his admission is really meaningless. That's what it's saying is he's chayv the kefal. Now watch this. Hachinami kidravina. So we'll say the Gemara says over here that lemaisa that we would apply the same definition over here. That this case is also. This case is also, we'll say, in accordance with the definition of Ravina. Look at Rashi, Kid Ravina. Shayu Eidim Krovim B'Nishosem B'Shash Shvuah L'Ficha Chayiv Karban Kiman D'Lesnu. Fine, so we'll say, so in this case over here, the witnesses were related ultimately again to the other parties, and therefore at the time that he took the Shvuah, they would be unable to go ahead and give any kind of testimony. That's why he's Chayiv. To which the Gemara says, Tashma. So we'll say, I'm sorry. Hachanami Kid Ravina. Amr Ravina Ravashi. Tashma. Chamura mimena shvuas hapikadon. I forgot to announce before, the shir is dedicated by Sarah Nayal Steinberg as a schus for refuah shlema for Shulamis Basusha. We hope that in the marriage of our Talmud Torah she will have a refuah together with Kol Yisra. So let's go back there. So the Gemara says Tashma Chamura mimena shvuas hapikadon shechayavin al zedona makis val shigagasa asham bekesef shkalim. So we'll say, so listen to this. So the Gemara says, Chamur ben Shuas Hapikadon. So Shuas Hapikadon is even more chamer than Shuas Ha'id. That's why. Shechayavan Azadona Makis, because I will say for intentional violation, you'll be Chayiv Malkis. Val Shigigasa Asham Bekesef Shkar. I will say ultimately again for a Shogig violation, you'll be Chayiv a carbon Asham worth 2 shkalim. Now watch this. We'll say, okay, we're back to we're still same question. Midika Amar Loka. The fact that it says he get Malkus, what does that tell me? Michlal di'ika edim. That tells me that what? That there must be witnesses. And it tells you that what? That for a shogeg, I'll have to bring a carbon ashram that is worth 2 shkalim. Amr Rav Mordechai, Amr Rav Mordechai says, Bar Mina, do not use this as a proof. Why? Dehahi da Amr Luhu Rav Kahana, Ana Taninala. Because that which Rav Kahana said, I taught, Vachi Taninala, and here's how I taught it. Echad Zedona ve'echad Shigagasa. Whether the violation is intentional, whether the violation is unintentional, Asham Bekesef Shkalim. Ultimately, again, you bring a carbon of 2 shkalim. Tashma. Loim Amrit Benazir Tameh. We'll say, reverting back to this proof that we brought before. When it comes to the case of Nazir Tameh, we'll say, which again, Kishmo Kenu is the Nazir who becomes Tameh. Shekein Loke. We'll say he gets Malkus because he intentionally becomes Tameh. Tomar B'Shvuas Hapikadon She'ina Loke. It will say for violation of a Shvuas Hapikadon, a person doesn't get Malkus. Now, what's the case? If there are no witnesses, Amai Loke, then I will say, why would he get Malkus? Or if there are no witnesses, then why in the case of Nazir Tameh would he get Malkus? Rather, I will say, it must be that it's a case of where what? There are witnesses. That's why in the case of Nazir Tameh he gets Malkus. But if there are witnesses, Vikatani, Tomar b'Shvuas Hapikadon She'ina Loke. Also, when it comes to Shvuas Hapikadon, what are we saying? He doesn't get Malkus. So what do you see from here? Milkahu de lo lucky. We'll say what you see is that in the case of Shvuas Hapikadon, there are no Malkus. Even for what? Even for a case of, of where there's intentional violation, and even what? Even in a case where there is Hasra. Abal Karban Maisi, I will say you'll bring a carbon to Yufta Derabav to Yufta. And indeed, ultimately, again, there seems to be a refutation to the position of Rabbi. So I will say, the way the Gemara ends off over here is it seems to say that even if there are Eidim, and even if there is Hasra, the punishment for intentional violation of B'Shuas HaPikadon remains unchanged. And under all circumstances, at most, one will only be chayiv a karban, one is not chayiv malchus. So we'll say, how do we paskin halacha l'maisa? Gotta know. How do we paskin halacha l'maisa? So listen to this. So the Rambam, this is in Parak Zayin Halacha Ches, in Hilchos Shevuos. So the Rambam says, listen to this, get ready. Hanishpa, Shvuas HaPikadon Memezin. In our case, person intentionally swears a false Shevuas HaPikadon. Intentionally does so. Afa Pisha Nishpa L'Shaker, even though a person intentionally, meaning, again, I go to Reuven gave me back my watch that I deposited with you. Reuven says, don't know what to do. What watch? Who are you? Right? So Reuven, and he knows that he's lying. And he knows that the punishment for a violation of an intentional shua is a karban. And again, he's warned by witnesses about what he's doing is wrong. What's the halacha? Eina lokeh. He doesn't get malchus. Ella maybe asham bilvad. Rather, I will say the penalty is going to be a karban asham. Why? Shari akasav hotzia mechlal chayve malchus v'chayvo asham bein bezadon bein b'shkal k'moshar. Because the Torah goes in and says that whenever it comes to a violation of a Shvuas HaPikadon, there is one punishment. And what is that one punishment? A karban asham worth at least 2 shkalim. Whether he got asra, didn't get asra, says the Rambam, is irrelevant for our purpose. So we'll say, Baruch Hashem, we have effectively resolved that kasha. Whew. Okay, good. Next, not finished. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Hakov Rama Sheish Lavedim Chayiv. So we'll say, Rabbi Yochanan comes along and says that if you go ahead and you intentionally deny a monetary obligation for which there are aidin, there are witnesses who could attest to my liability, chayiv, right? Chayiv. But on the other hand, bishtar pater. We'll say, but if I go ahead and I deny liability regarding money that is recorded in a shtar, ultimately I'm gonna be pater. We'll say this means pater from liability, pater from punishment. Amra Papa. So we'll say, what's the logic over here? My time is Rabbi Yochanan. Eid mavidi dimaisi. You know why? Because witnesses ultimately again die. Rashi says, Hilchach mahanyele kefiraso im yamusua edim. So we'll say ultimately again, so we'll say the chap over here what the Gemara is saying is like this. If you go ahead, what the Gemara seems to be saying is, if you deny liability about a monetary claim that is supported by witnesses, I'm chayiv for that. Why I will say? Because in that case, my denial could actually potentially free me from obligation. But yet if I deny a monetary obligation that is recorded in a shtar, I'll be pater from the karban. Now, so the Gemara is trying to understand why is that? Because we will say people die. So because people die, if I deny the claim, it's possible that what? I may be able to weasel myself out of it, because the witnesses just may never show up, they may die. As a result, again, my kfira is meaningful. Because my kfira is meaningful, therefore my liability, I'm chayv a karban. On the other hand, shtar, hamanach. I will say, if a liability is recorded in a document, then what? You could swear up and down that you're not liable. Is it going to make one shred of difference? And the answer is no. Why? Because there's a document that highlights the claim. But 1 second. Documents are lost, right? Documents are lost. What do you mean? You make it sound like if the debt is recorded in a document, nothing to talk about. Here we go. What's Rabbi Yochanan's logic? We'll say here's the difference. Anytime a debt is recorded in a shtar, that creates a shibud, that creates a lien on real property. And therefore, Rabbi say, when a person goes ahead and denies a financial obligation recorded in a shtar, they're effectively denying what? They're effectively denying karko, right? Ve'in mevi'in karka al kfiras shibud karkos. We'll say, and we'll discuss why this is, but you do not go ahead and bring a karban, ultimately again, for shibud karkos, for anything that has a lien against land. So Rabbi I'll just say, interestingly enough, this is how the Rambam paskins as well. The Rambam says this is in Perek Ches Halacha Yudalin. Haisalav milva be'edim bilvad. Rabbi listen to this. So let's say I lent Reuven money, and just to the witnesses, the kafar, and Reuven says he didn't owe me money. He denied the liability. Vinishpa, and he swore that he did not owe me money. We'll say, what's the halacha? Chayiv b'shvuas hapikadon. He will be chayiv ultimately again for a violation of shvuas hapikadon. Shavuos means what? Which means what? He'll have to bring a karban asham. Why? Shrei pater atzmo b'kfirasom l'shalim mata. Because Rabbi say his denial is what was going to sound strange, is a valid denial. Also, what I mean, it's a valid denial. In other words, it works. That type of denial could actually work. It could actually potentially, what the halacha is going to say is, The only time you're chayiv for a false shvuah sabikadon is when your false shvuah could have served to potentially free you from liability. But if anyway you were going to become liable, then Lamaisa Yeshua is pretty much inconsequential. You took a false shvuah, but you won't be chayiv the carbon. So we'll say, when I lent Reuven money, which means I deposited money with him, and Reuven, and just as witnesses, and what happens? And Reuven denies that claim, and he swears, that he doesn't have it, and it turns out that he's a liar, he will be chayiv a carbon asham. Why? Because Lamaisa, again, his kfira, his denial could have potentially freed him from liability. However, because it's possible the witnesses won't show up, it's possible they'll die, it's possible they'll be disqualified. Therefore, his denial of the liability to me is in fact an effective denial. It's a false denial, and therefore, again, when it turns out that he's a liar, he will have to go ahead and bring a carbon asham. So we'll say that is ultimately, again, halacha l'maisa. However, again, if the document or if the debt is ultimately recorded in a document and he denies liability and he swears to that effect, he will not be chayev for a false shvuas hapikadon. We'll say, why not? It's really according to the second reasoning, because l'maisa every shtar is backed up by karka, and as we will learn, one is not chayev for denying claims regarding real property. I should say differently. One is not chayev a carbon asham for a violation of shvuas hapikadon for denying claims against real property. Good. Weiter. Says the Gemara, Itmar, we'll say this is really interesting. Mashpia ede karka. So we'll say along the same lines, I go ahead and I go over to Reuven and Shimon. You know testimony regarding the fact that Levi owes me land. So I am adjuring them, right? I am going in and making them take a shvuah sa'idus regarding a real property claim that I have against someone else. So we'll say, what's the halacha? And then what happens? We know the script. What's the script? They say, we have no knowledge. They swear to that effect, and then it what? Turns out that they're lying. They have knowledge. So we'll say, the shaila is, they denied knowledge regarding a claim that is focused on real property. So the shaila is, what is their liability? So pligi Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Lazar, chadam chayiv, chadam pater. One says they're chayiv, one says they are pater. So says the Gemara, Tistayim, to Rabbi Yochanan Damei Pater. So it must be Rabbi Yochanan's one says Pater. Why? Midam Rabbi Yochanan hakofer b'mamon sheyesh alav eidim chayiv. Because what Rabbi Yochanan just said before, that if one goes ahead and denies a monetary claim, and there are witnesses to the claim, but the claim is not recorded anywhere, they're just witnesses. So the halach is, and he swears falsely that he doesn't have the money, he's going to be chayiv. However, shtar pater. But ultimately, if the claim is recorded in a document, Rabbi Osai, and the holder of the money, right, the holder of the money denies liability, he will be pater. Pater meaning from a carbon asham. Why? Because as you just said before, because anything recorded in the shtar is backed up by real property, and one is not chayiv for denial of claims of real property. We'll say first wide line, in accordance with the opinion of Rav Huna ben Yeshua, and he says the Gemara Tistayim, you are correct. Amar le Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Avo. Leima, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Plukta, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbana Kamil. We'll say, watch this. This actually is a riveting case. So say the machlokes ultimately again, between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lazar is the same machlokes in Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbana. We'll say, watch this. This really is fascinating. This not. We'll say third wide line. Hagozel sada mechaver. We'll say, watch this. It's very exciting. I steal a field from my friend. V'shat fanar. We'll say, now what happens? I steal the field. Now after I steal the field, I'm a chozer b'tshuva. Right? We'll say, every Jew does tshuva. Soloveitchik points out, he says that, the word tshuva, we often translate it as repentance, but it doesn't mean repentance. What does it mean? It means return. He says the raya is the first time we see the word tshuva. Well, not the first time, but one of the times we see the word tshuva is by Shmuel Hanavi. So the Navi says Shmuel Hanavi was literally the first circuit judge. He went ahead and he would leave his home, and throughout the year he would travel around the Eretz Yisrael. So the pasuk says, Uteshuva sa harama, when he would return to his home in Ramah, in the north of Eretz Yisrael. So the Rav says every Jew does tshuva. The only shaila is because life is a circle. He only says the only variable is how large the radius of the circle is. He says some people have a radius anaki. Some people the circle is a large radius. Some people the circle is a small radius. everybody does tshuva. So we'll say, everybody does tshuva. Everybody does tshuva. Some people do it when they're young, some people do it on their deathbed, some people do it with their final breath, but everybody does tshuva. So we'll say, I steal a field from my friend, and I do tshuva. Here's the difference. In the interim, shat fanar. So we'll say, let's say I steal a field, a wheat field from Reuven. And we'll say, what happens? The field is flooded. The field is flooded. So we'll say, again, through no fault of my own. Act of, what do they call it? Act of God? Act of God, right? Act of God. Field, it was flooding. Act of God. So we'll say, what's the halacha now? Now I want to return the field. What's the shaila? The shaila is, what's my liability? So chayv lahamid lo sada. So we'll say, Rabbi Eliezer says, you have to give him a new field. Or we'll say, look at Rashi, chayv lahamid lo sada, the kasavar karka nigzelas, the kamel and b'shus gazlan, the karina beveshav zagzela. So we'll say, Rabbi Eliezer says, you could steal real property, and therefore, again, when you steal something, remember, whenever a ganav steals something, that property becomes his. As such, a ganav will say, what's my obligation as a ganav? My obligation as a ganav is to give back the value of the object as it was at the time that I stole it. Because once I stole it, I acquired it. My obligation for Sheheshav as Hagzela is to return that which was stolen in accordance with its value at the time it was stolen. Therefore, again, Rabbi Eliezer says, Therefore, Rabbi Eliezer says, I have to give him, literally have to give him a field. Whatever that means. Whether I have to give him another piece of property, I have to give him the financial value. The Chum say, no, listen, this is wild. Omer lo, harei shachal lefanecha. So what happens? I say, Reuven, here's your field back. So what happens? So Reuven says, but that's not the field you stole. So we'll say, now that I did tshuva, I'm very frum. The best part about doing tshuva is what? You can give Musar to other people. And I say, Reuven, you really have to work on your emunah. This was the Ratzon HaBorei. This is what the Ribbon Shalom wanted from you. Right, sir? And I did tshuva 5 minutes ago, so I'm in a position to give Musar. So now what happens? I say to Reuven, I don't know what you want from me. I stole this field. So I'm giving back that which I stole. So we'll say, the fundamental machlokis over here, we'll say, is really what? Now, we'll get into the mechanism, but the fundamental machlokis itself is, can real property be stolen? Rabbi Eliezer clearly says yes. Rabbi Eliezer says, yes, you could steal real property. That's why at the moment I stole it, the field becomes mine, the thief, and my obligation is to give back the field to the owner at the value of the time that it was stolen. Chacham say, you can't steal real property. In fact, again, even though I kept Reuven out of the property all this time, the property was his. It was always his. The fact that I built a 6-foot wall, and I didn't let him into it, at the end of the day, it was still his property. Karka eina nigzelas. You can't steal real property. If you look at Rashi, Chasavar karka eina nigzelas, v'chishat fanar birshusei demarakame hikaima. Therefore, we'll say, when the river overran the field, in fact, whose field was it overrunning? Reuven's field. It was Reuven's field the whole time. So we'll say, but Amrina, we say, what are they arguing about? Rabbi Eliezer darish ribuy miute, v'Rabbanan darish klali uprati. So it says, we'll see over here what they're really arguing about. We'll say, are in exegetical principles. How do we darish in the pasuk? Do we darish in klal uprat? Ribuy umiut. And Rabbi Semir Hashem. We'll continue with this tomorrow. Shkoyach.